I would like to formally open the seminar, Homelessness in Minnesota, A Closer Look, and welcome everyone. I am Paul Mattessich. I'm the Executive Director of Wilder Research. I'll moderate a portion of the day today and also offer a few remarks. The statewide study of homelessness, which we will focus on primarily today, provides information at one point in time. Information on homelessness, its causes, its circumstances, its effects. And it's based on interviews with homeless people. The HMIS, Homeless Management Information System, is a continuously operating system that provides information about service use and gives us a better understanding of the capacity of the system to provide service, what the patterns of use are of services among homeless individuals and families, and that information is collected from service providers. So we have the advantage with these two of having an ongoing, real-time, close to real-time system for understanding service use, and on the other hand, a way to get in-depth information about people who are homeless so that we can better understand what some of those causes and consequences are. With that, I've been asked to make a few remarks about the importance of having a permanent address as a way of setting up the review of the study findings and thinking about how it is that we move from research into action as a result of what we hear today and as a result of the work in which all of us are involved. Homelessness. Can we solve the issue? Can we resolve the problem? What is it that we actually can do? While the research studies it a lot, you've seen we do that through this study we're going to talk about today, through the HMIS. But can we move from studying it, looking at the problem, to actually having an impact on the problem? Why is it that we should care? Can we actually be efficacious? Can we do anything about it? I think the reason why we should care is that compassion motivates many of us, especially those of us who are in this system of providing human services. We want to help people who are vulnerable. We want to make a difference in people's lives. We want to improve the quality of life in our community. We want to live out our values. But can we actually achieve that with this issue? There has been progress, but as many of you know, and as you're going to see more today, there's also been some worsening of the problem. Is this something that's intractable? Is this something for which the cost is absolutely insurmountable? What would the cost be of solving the problem of homelessness? And I'll give you the honest answer that I don't know exactly. I don't have exact facts and figures that could answer that question. But in a way, I tried to figure this out just by kind of back-of-the-envelope calculations, asking myself, is the cost insurmountable? And one way I thought about it was to say, well, there's a certain number of homeless people who really just need housing. They could get by if they had housing. They don't need other special services. And you'll see some numbers today that might help you to think about how many homeless individuals and families fall into that category. But again, on the back of the envelope, I just said, well, let's assume it's 1,000. We have 1,000 people who are in that situation. Okay? And let's assume we could give them $750 a month just to get an apartment somewhere. Multiply 1,000 by 750 by 12. Divide that by the total number of people who live in the state of Minnesota. And it comes out to $1.75 per year, approximately, per state resident, to put 1,000 homeless people who don't need services into housing. Now, if you don't like my assumptions or my numbers, put your own numbers as to what it might cost a month for these people, but you'll probably come up with a number very similar. Now, many of you are saying, yes, but there's other people who need a lot more than just a place to live. They need some supportive services. So again, I pulled my envelope out, scratched out some numbers on that. I assumed that, well, let's just say it costs $1,500 a month to have somebody in supportive housing. What might that cost per state resident for 1,000 people? That comes out to about $3.50 per state resident. And again, if you don't like my numbers, use 2,000 instead of 1,500. The dollar figure is not going to go up a whole lot. Now, I know you can't play this game interminably because there's all kinds of issues out there that you could say, well, it would only be a few dollars to cure them, and obviously there is a finite amount of money that people can pay in taxes and so on, but the point I do want to raise is that this isn't something that necessarily has to be considered a huge, insurmountable, unsolvable problem. It's also important to recognize that there are structural features which produce homelessness, that the causes are both structural and individual. So, for example, low vacancy rates, lack of low-cost housing, lack of health care resources, unemployment rates. Again, if you had 130 people who needed a job, but only 100 jobs, you could do every possible service you can imagine to try to get people job ready, more highly skilled, but in the end, 30 of them would still be out of work because there's only 100 jobs for 130 people. So there are these structural features that cause homelessness and need to be addressed. In addition, as we know, there are individual features, causes, correlates of homelessness. Severe mental illness, domestic violence, which pushes many women and children into homelessness, low income, and unfavorable credit or rental history. But the important concept to take away is that we've got to work on both of those levels, the structural level and the individual level, thinking about the economy, the community, as well as about individuals themselves and their capability to do what they need to do to sustain themselves. If we don't, there are other costs that we will pay. For example, health and health care. Research has demonstrated a clear link between homelessness and increased chronic physical and mental health conditions, between homelessness and increased use of emergency rooms. With education, a definite link between homelessness and lower school performance, lower graduation rates. What do lower graduation rates translate into? Lower purchasing power, lower tax receipts, lower productivity, lower other things that you can imagine. Take emergency room use and look at some of the data. In our study, 42% of homeless adults had used emergency room services in the past 6 months. Of those who had used such services, they averaged 2.5 visits. At about $1,000 or more per visit, the costs can tally up pretty quickly. Who pays those costs? Education. In our survey, 55% of unaccompanied young adults graduated from high school. This is of the young adult, 18 to 21-year-olds in the survey graduated. National estimate is that each dropout costs the nation $260,000 over their lifetime. Well, who pays that? The individuals involved pay some of it, but all of us pay a portion of it. So there's a cost to not acting as well as a cost to actually taking action. The Family Housing Fund found that the cost of supportive housing for a chronically homeless family is less than half the cost of public services required if they remain homeless. You're going to see later on in Dr. Owen's discussion a description of characteristics of the homeless, of the near homeless, and of some of the things that constitute the path in to homelessness and some of the avenues for leaving it. He'll be describing that, giving you some data that will enable you to understand just where people fall into these circles. But I do encourage you to remember that it's not just an individual issue. There are economic conditions, there are systemic barriers. We have to address them as well as thinking about rehabilitation and services to individuals and families. And hopefully that will lead to more pathways out of homelessness.